So we'll hope that this comes through for Christopher. I'll send this to him. So if you can't hear me, folks, you need to move forward. Unless you're just planning on sitting in the back and sleeping, in which case, whatever. All right. So, at this point, the idea we're starting with strategies for development. So what we're basically talking about here is how we might develop our product. Now, fads come into play here. Okay. And what I mean by that is, at one point when the internet was new, do y'all remember when every business had to have what? A .com. They had to have a website, right? So, Susie's Pie Garage Bakery website, right? Hershey's Chocolate website. Everybody had to have a website. And what I used to equate that to is this. Unless you're actually going to work your website, work the leads that come through it, give people new content and reasons to go back to your website, then what's the use in having it, right? Well, pretty soon people got away from the yellow pages and suddenly you needed a website. So when people searched Google for insurance agencies in Bend, Oregon, they might find you, right? And then what we needed to do is we needed to figure out how you came in the top 1 or 2 in the rankings, because nobody looked past that, do they? When you Google search something, do you select the first, second, third, or the 10th result? Maybe the top 5. Exactly. Right. So then we got into this trend of, we've seen almost a full circle. Okay. Computing started out with the mainframe and the dumb terminal. Big computer in one room, no processing, just I/O, right? Monitors, keyboards, maybe mice, and we all entered data. Okay. Then it became, we started sneaker netting. We put software on each computer because each computer now had processing power. Then from there, we realized that wasn't real efficient, that we needed to put the data and sometimes the applications back on a server, right? And by serving it, everybody had access to it. Then from there, where are we now? We're in this idea of the cloud. We're in this idea of software as a service. Okay. So what's the advantages for Microsoft to deliver Office to you as a service versus as a disk you install on your computer? Reoccurring income. Ding, 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 ding. Is that all that it's about?
They save costs on the discs.
They save costs on discs. Chad, so you're very smart. This I know to be true. What other costs might they save as an IT professional? What other costs?
I'm not that smart, I guess.
That's all right. I'll help you out. What happens the second Tuesday of every month? They push updates. Now, do they have to push updates to everybody if you're using their software as a service? Because who's now managing the software? Where does it sit? Who's running the cloud? Microsoft. So where do they push their updates to? They push it to one location. So suddenly they don't have to make sure it runs on this Dell laptop and this Dell this and this HP and this that. As long as it runs on their server, right? And who secures that then? So do I need to really worry about security flaws on this and that and the other? No. So are we seeing a lot more cost savings besides just disks?
This would be less development time.
Less development time, faster deployment, right? And if they want to give us a feature, they just plug it in. And as long as it works in all the browsers, we're happy. How cool is that? Are more companies doing that? If you want QuickBooks today for your company, where is it most likely going to sit? Where's your data going to sit? Are you going to go buy QuickBooks, install it on your laptop, and have all your data there? I see a head shaking no. Where's it going to sit? On a server. Who's going to manage that server? QuickBooks. Yeah. Right? And why do I like that? Because where can I get to my data? Anywhere I have a what connection. As long as I can get to the internet, right? QuickBooks will give me an interface to my data here. I need to pay a bill. I do it here. I'm sitting in a hotel on a kiosk. I get there, right?
Only QuickBooks work that way.
Huh?
Only QuickBooks work that way.
Yeah.
They don't even connect with TurboTax, which is another company of their own.
Oh, I know.
It's horrible.
So here's the deal. But does that mean software as a service is the only solution? Can I still build a server with my application in my location and do that? Of course I can. Just because software as a service exists doesn't mean it's right for me. There's also federal regulations that keep some companies from doing software as a service. Electronic medical records. Do you want your records out on the cloud? Or do you want to know they're safely secured at St. Charles Medical Center? So it says 25% of all business software will be deployed as software by a service by 2011. Folks, we can run an entire business off the web. It used to be that I recommended that companies go with Microsoft Office for their spreadsheets, for their word processing. Today, I don't. A startup business today, especially a small company, go with Google. Give them your domain name. They can host your website. They can host your email. You get calendaring. You get tasks. You get all this stuff for $50 a year per user. And where can your users access their data? Anywhere. Can they get their corporate email on their phone? Yes. So development, however, is very different. Whether we're developing it for the web or we're developing it to run on PC or Mac. Remember the old days when you go to Costco to get a piece of software that you want? You had to make sure you got the copy that was for your operating system, right? PC or Mac. And then that became such a pain. Companies finally got smart and said, you know what we'll do? We'll spend 5 cents more and put in each box the Mac disk and the PC disk. That way you don't have to return when you got PC and you needed Mac. Right? And then they went one step further and said, forget this. We'll just give a little card with the little scratchy number and you download the software. Now that's really cool for us technicians, isn't it? Because we know we need to back that stuff up. The problem is the end user who's downloaded 5, 6, 7 programs and then loses their computer. Because where was their license key? Where was the URL to download the software? Yeah, it's a pain. Why do we design for the web, though? Why do we design for the web?
Because a lot of people use it. So everybody uses it.
Do we need to worry about PC and Mac? No, right? All we need to worry about is creating not our entire program, but simply a user interface that's supported by multiple browsers, if we choose to, right? Has Microsoft come to the table and said, you know what? We really need to make sure Office 365 works in Google Chrome. What do you think? Ain't ever going to happen, is it? But other companies need to make sure their software works cross-platform. That's the cool thing with the web. Because now suddenly it doesn't matter if Chad's running Unix, Linux, PC, Mac, whatever. As long as he has a compatible browser for my product, it's going to work, right? Is that going to reduce production time? Development cost? Yeah. I love Wednesdays. You guys are always so interactive. So, huh? It's Monday. You guys are supposed to be like, yeah. So, systems are developed and delivered in an internet-based framework such as .NET or WebSphere. Do y'all know the history behind .NET and what it was designed for? Microsoft's .NET framework. So, if I was to ask you today what some popular programming languages are, what would you tell me? Java, C++, Python, Ruby on Rails, right? What do you think it might have been back in my day? At least somebody didn't say back in your day they didn't have computers. Well, yeah, they did. Back in my day, it was a little bit of Java had started. It was C#, it was C++, it was Visual Basic. Okay. The problem was, if you were good at Visual Basic and Chad over here was good at C#, I had to choose a language in which to write my program in so it all did what? All what? Fit together, work together, right? Compiled together. Was that inconvenient? Yeah, right? It was. Because then I couldn't use the resources that I had. So what .NET did is it came through and it said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to create some standard environments for C#, C++, J#, Visual Basic. You program in what you know, you program in what you know, and the compiler will compile it all together into my program. Isn't that cool? So that's where .NET came about. And then, of course, .NET exploded into classes that were designed and supported to create web-based applications quickly. How many people have taken the CIS244 class? How much original code, what percentage of original code do you think you're going to write today in building a web-based application?
No.
I heard none. Maybe so. That's the whole great thing about object-oriented programming, right? If I need a calculator object for .NET, do you think I can find 1 or 1,000 out on the web? Yeah. So internet-based development, excuse me, treats the web as a platform rather than just a communication channel. So we're designing for the web. And with that comes some standardization. So Google just updated their operating system to Lollipop, right? The key to that was they now have some very strict guidelines for how applications are to be developed for the Android operating system. That way, when you need to delete something, you know that you can delete it in this application or that application by just left swiping, right? You know, when you click here, the same operation should happen in this application as in this, as in this. What's that going to do for the user?
Make everything
Make everything more familiar. Do you really think the user is what's important here? Just asking.
Yeah.
You do. All right. And I would agree. The cooler thing, though, is if I have an object called left swipe delete, how many times does a developer need to write that object? Exactly. Or go get it. Right? So my development time is cut. I give the user a better user interface, better user experience, and who wins? Everybody. Because then next thing you know, everybody's downloading my Flappy Bird game to play, and I'm making $50,000 a day. That dude was making. Well, he got tired of being picked on. Everybody was playing his game, but telling him how to program it. You know, like we don't do that with our, professional athletes either, right? If you would just change your ring finger 2 degrees, you'd make more baskets. So Web 2.0, who knows where we are? We could be on Web 5.0. Are we seeing big changes in the web today? Anybody using like test out for a class? Okay. Microsoft, right? Google said we're no longer going to support Silverlight because it's proprietary. We're going to support this thing called HTML5. Remember when Steve Jobs was alive? He said, I'm not putting Flash on my iPads, my iPods. Why? It was proprietary.
Really funny.
Hey, what I say and what I do are 2 different things, my friend. Okay, one makes me money, one doesn't. If it's proprietary and makes me money, done. But he really was right in what he was saying. Because there's this idea that they're competing and in certain aspects they need to compete. And in certain aspects, we really need as users a unified experience, right? So if everybody's doing HTML5, now what they're competing on is features, reliability, performance, not on proprietary things. We're always going to have proprietary. So the idea of cloud one of the cool things with cloud is suddenly we have all these big, huge computers that you as a small business could not afford to put in your location, right? But now you have access to disk speed. Do you have to back up your cloud-based applications? No. Who do you assume is doing that for you? Who's ever hosting them? By the way, don't make that mistake. This week, I was unable to help. I referred this on, but I'm involved with an organization. They had a website. Their website got hacked through a known vulnerability, and it got hijacked. So instead of saying what their company did, it promoted people to a very inappropriate site. So they called up and said, we got to get this off. We have a conference in a month. People are going to our site. And I said, well, this is pretty simple. We'll just restore it, change passwords, and update. Restore it from what? From the backup. We don't have a backup. People don't think. But is it their job or your job to get them to back it up? Yeah, if you're the IT pro, it's your job. So outsourcing, we've seen a huge growth in outsourcing. We've seen some outsourcing come back, right? I remember what I refer to as the dying day of Dell. One day I pick up the phone to call Dell, and I have gold support for my company. I pay a lot for the support, and I get someone from India that I could not understand. And they want to spend 2 hours walking me through a process to to replace a power supply. When just the day before I could call my local US rep and say, Greg, I need this part for this machine, this part for that machine, this part for that machine. And what would Greg say? It's on its way. You put them in, you're good to go. Was I a little pissed off? Yeah. That lasted for a week for Dell before they brought back at least the gold support. Okay. Today we're outsourcing everything. Can I find a company in India to build me a mobile application based on an idea? Yes. Why? Why are we outsourcing? It's cheaper. It's cheaper. So the only real firsthand example I can give you of that is when I was working for a company doing an internship for my master's. I was in China, and I was able to calculate that an engineer, a mechanical engineer, not a software engineer, a mechanical engineer in China was making about $10 a day, and that was superior salary. $10 a day. What does a mechanical engineer make here an hour? At least twice that. An hour. $20, $30 an hour, without a doubt. The problem is there needs to be a balance between what we can get done and what impact it has on our customers and our business, right? So a lot of the outsourcing we're seeing, a lot of it is coming back. People are realizing it's worth the extra cost to get things done. We also realize that the language barrier created challenges, right? So outsourcing fees, so fixed fee model uses a set of fee-based on a specific level of service or user support. Okay, well, Google has a fixed base for their Google apps. It's $50 a year per user, right? So subscription model, variable fee, an example of that would be Microsoft Azure server, where I can go instantiate a server with with half a core, with 500 meg of RAM, that is redundant, and it cost me $15 a month. All the way up to 128 cores, 64 gigs of RAM, okay? As much disk space as I want. Something tells me that's going to cost me a few thousand a month. The usage model or transaction model charges a variable fee based on the volume of transactions or operations performed by the application. This is how you buy your internet today in some cases, correct? What happens when you go over your limit with Ben Broadband? What do? What happens when you go over your data limit on your phone? Yeah, right? They charge you. So they're charging by usage. And the reason being, at one point, I knew the head of customer support at Ben Broadband. And he had done a report not exposing any proprietary data, mind you. It showed of the subscribers to Ben Broadband's internet service, 5% of their subscribers were using 85% of the bandwidth. Downloading illegal music, BitTorrent, stuff like that. Is it Ben Broadband's responsibility to monitor that stuff and turn these people in? No, it's not. But they had to change their model because everybody was paying for this small percentage of people. So outsourcing issues and concerns. One of the things that I've seen when you have a hybrid of, I run applications locally, I run applications on the web, I have this web-based application that's my email that integrates with this web-based application that's my SharePoint site they're run by two different companies and something goes wrong, what do people tend to do? Where do they point the finger? Outward. That's not our problem, that's their problem. So you see, even as all this stuff goes to the web, in my humble opinion, there's more need for IT professionals. Because now it's not in your office, you can't fix it locally. You need somebody who understands how to communicate and how to solve problems between two companies that don't want to talk to each other. Right? So what we need to decide is, should mission critical things be outsourced? Well, we look at the cost, we look at the benefit, we look at the total cost of ownership, we look at the reliability. Is it the case that a web-based service is more likely to be able to have better uptime than am I managing it locally in my organization? Why? What can they offer? Redundancy. That I simply cannot afford, right? So outsourcing also can affect day-to-day company operations and can raise some concerns. You bet. What's the biggest concern with outsourcing? Starts with an S.
Service?
No. Security. Service security. It is security though, because where's my data sitting? Somewhere else in the web. Now, what's interesting about that is as more generations come up, they seem to be less concerned with that. I've recently figured out, why is it that the kids like Snapchat? Why do they Snapchat?
Supposedly disappears.
Say that again, big and loud.
Supposedly disappears.
It supposedly disappears.
Except that it doesn't.
It may disappear from my phone, but does it disappear from their servers?
Somewhere out there.
It is somewhere out there. And I would ascertain that Snapchat has been told legally they have to keep the data. So many firms sending IT overseas, yes. Not only are we seeing IT being shipped overseas, but now we're starting to see back office operations shipped overseas. What do I mean by back office? Supporting office. Anybody know?
Just like tech support.
Nope, that's IT.
Payroll.
Payroll, great example. Payroll being shipped overseas, human resources being shipped overseas, accounting being shipped overseas, development being shipped overseas. I just lost my train of thought. I know, not surprising. What is that cheap TV that Costco sells?
Vizio?
Vizio. You know how many employees Vizio has? I don't know how many they have now, but at one point they ran that entire company with under 100 full-time employees. Everything was outsourced. They outsourced the engineering, they outsourced the manufacturing, they outsourced the distribution, they outsourced everything. They ran everything on contract. That's why they could sell the TVs so cheaply. So unique risks and concerns. My data sits out on the web, and if I can get to the data, so can somebody else. So can a hacker. Now, the interesting thing is, who suddenly becomes responsible? Who's responsible for securing my data? Huh?
Service provider.
The service provider? You think so?
They always say they're not responsible for anything.
Well, they can say they're not responsible, but clearly if the attack comes from a vulnerability they should be managing, then yes. But let me show you the problem with that. These are, my friends, the top 25 passwords. What do you see in here? Do you see convenience? What are the first, if you were going to start becoming a hacker, what are the first top 25 things you might try to hack into somebody's account? You think you might try these? Do you know how easy it is to hack into my CIS120 students' accounts?
Everyone keeps their initials and birthdays. That's the best way.
Exactly. And where do I find your birthday today? I have this thing called Google.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will post at least their day and month of their birthday on their main public page in Facebook. In which case, all I need to do is spend a little time guessing the year. Garth, I'm going to take a stab. Please don't be. I definitely would not do this with the lady in the room. Okay. Garth, I'm going to say that you're 24 years of age.
Yep.
Ding, 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 ding. I wonder how much I'm going to need. Oh, look, there's a birthday calculator. I don't even need to calculate your year. I'll just put in the age and it'll tell me the year you were born. Yay for me. A hacker's delight. You see where I'm going with this? Now, is Microsoft responsible because you're an idiot and used a short password? Has Adobe taken all their stuff to the web? Wow, my typing's terrible today. Top 100 Adobe passwords. Wow. The top password, 1,900,000 passwords on the Adobe site. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll make it more complex. I'll add 7, 8, and 9. Yay for me. See, this is where you start. Really, Daniel? Michael? Oh, probably because they're common names, right? So their username is probably Michael and their password is Michael. Uh-oh. Did I shut the PowerPoint? Son of a gun. Chad, why'd you let me do that, man?
I'm surprised that Adobe didn't enforce stronger passwords.
Well, see, here's the challenge. How do you?
You just program that in to your requirements.
Yeah, except what did you suddenly do for your users? You've made it harder, right?
If you're using Adobe, you can't get it more. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, see, for you as an IT professional, it doesn't make sense. But for the end user, they don't want to have to remember a password that has uppercase, lowercase, and special characters, do they? They don't want to have to be limited to 15, or have to have 15 characters. They want convenience. Folks, one of the most insecure things we have in our financial institution is this freaking thing called a debit card. But why? Because it's convenient. And the thing that always trumps security is convenience. Until what? Until it affects you. Yep. I can't tell you how many times I've recommended security systems, backup systems, and the company says, we just can't afford that. And then something goes wrong and suddenly they can't not afford it, right?
Like airports,
Yeah,
the whole 9/11 thing, totally changed.
right. And now what's happening though? We're going back the other way. And then as soon as we have another terrorist thing, what's going to happen? We'll go back the other way, right? This is just how it works. You know, I mean, I'll give you my example. Starting to get fat, I'm going to go back to the gym. I'll get lean, I'll stop going to the gym, right? Part of it's the drugs. Prescription drugs given to me by a doctor. For all of you out on the web. All right, so lower costs requires less time to implement. Yeah, I don't have to install it. I don't have to configure it. I don't have to have a computer. Boom, it's up, it's running. Proven reliability. Somebody else designed it, developed it, troubleshot it, whatever the case may be. Future upgrades may be provided by the vendor. Or now, wait till Windows 10 comes out. Who gets Windows 10?
Everybody.
Not everybody.
Everyone with 7 is there.
Everybody with Windows 7 and Windows 8.
Well, technically, anybody who gets Windows, because they're supposedly not making anything past 10. It tends the last version and then it's all updates.
Yeah. There goes a huge revenue source. Who knows? Maybe it'll work. The problem with buying a software package is very difficult to customize. As soon as we customize it, we're limiting our support. As soon as we change code, can we break it? Yeah. Is the company then going to support it? No. Here's what I always seem to see, and I've experienced this myself. At Columbia Aircraft, we needed a document management system. We found a software. It didn't meet the processes in the system, didn't meet our process. What do you think's easier, changing the physical process or changing the software? Sorry, do you change the software to meet your process or do you change your process to meet the software? Ah, software to meet the process. Well, let's try this. My software says you can't sit there. It's going to take me 2 weeks to reprogram the software, right? My software says you need to sit here. It's going to cost me 2 weeks and $10,000 to change the software. What's the cost if you get your fat butt up and move to that other seat? All right. So which one would be easier? Thank you very much. But most companies don't. They want the software to meet their process. Let me tell you what happens when we did that at Columbia Aircraft. The software got so convoluted and so buggy, it was no longer useful to the company. Right? So we can change a physical process easier than we can software. But most companies want software to match. Now, if you need software to match, if the business process is your competitive advantage, then build your own software, right? So, you can negotiate directly with the software vendor to do it. You can purchase the software, have no support. You can do a special license to do it. What QuickBooks has done is they've realized there's standard industries that are using their software, and they themselves have customized the software, right, to have what's called GL, general ledger entries, that different industries use. And then you just pay a little extra for your industry, right? Or a lot extra. A lot of you will find as you go through this process, you're going to find that a lot of the gym softwares integrate with QuickBooks. The reason being, why create your own accounting package if there's already one that works, right? In-house software development. What do we need to develop software in-house? Experts. Is that costly? Yep. Now, in a lot of cases at Columbia Aircraft, I had a database programmer. I had an application developer. I had a UI developer. They would work together to create customized solutions that we were able to deploy very quickly. So it was cost effective because we already had these people on payroll and on staff. So report generators, read-only properties. So the role of the system analyst, selecting hardware, software systems analysts often work as an evaluation and selection team. Why? Why hire an analyst to decide what software is best for your company?
Because they may see processes or points that you need to go.
They could. Also, most likely, you don't have someone in your organization that's qualified that knows about software.
You have to make it meet your needs.
You have to make it meet your needs. Be careful with that. Sometimes maybe you have to modify your needs to match the software, right? Again, which one's easier? Exactly. So evaluation selection team eliminates system alternatives. We have to look at this, kind of goes back to what we've talked about, but we have to look at what software is best. And sometimes we may have to give up things we think we need in order to get the software in place by the time we need it, right? Have we already discussed that it really doesn't work to put more money and more resources at a dying project? We've looked at the complexity, right? We're just ensuring that we're killing a project better, faster, and with more money. What's the one question? I haven't asked this in probably a week. What's the one question you ask every day? Is today the day we kill the project? So analyzing costs and benefits. What's the payback analysis? What's the return on investment? Meaning, when is the system going to pay for itself? When does the system start making money for our company? Do we ever put in systems that will never make money? We can. Maybe we're required by federal regulation to do so, right? What's net present value? What is net present value? Anybody know?
What it costs per day, maybe.
What it costs per day? You're sort of close.
Total value of the benefits minus the total value of the costs.
That's not net present value.
So the book says, or with both costs and benefits adjusted to reflect the time at which they occur.
There it is. That's what makes it net present value. So here's the idea. Is $1 today worth the same amount as $1 10 years from now? No. So we really can't say, now, by the way, on your projects, we're talking about 5 years. I don't expect you to do a net present value adjustment. Okay. Let's be clear on that. But $1 in 1960 is not worth what $1 is worth today. Would we all agree? Okay. So if we're looking at a 10-year investment in something, we need to figure out what it's really going to cost us today. Because if we're spending the money today, it needs to be in today's money, right? So if we spent $1 10 years from now, what might that have been worth today? $2? Boy, I hope we never get to that inflationary rate over a decade. Unless I'm debt free and I've got a bunch of investments, then go for it. So list each development strategy being considered, identify all costs and benefits for each alternative. Again, do you have to choose a web-based solution for your project? You don't. You may decide you can build it cheaper or build something that you feel is a competitive advantage to personal trainer. Consider future growth, include support costs for hardware and software, licensing costs. You know, I did have a team of 4 people who thought about all the costs, but I'm like, so how much does the system cost from the provider? Uh-oh. You know, they had, implementation costs. They had estimated a data exchange cost, the whole 9 yards. But they forgot about licensing the software. Do we pay each year for support? So make sure, does your license include support or is support separate? Because we can buy software without support. Analyze various software licensing options. I always joke, Microsoft has gotten a little bit better, but I used to say someone could get a master's degree in Microsoft licensing, because you have these client access licenses and you need a client access license in order to use Outlook on a desktop that connects to a web server. What?
Still a nightmare.
Yeah. And then there's per machine licensing, per user licensing. And if you're doing your job as an IT professional, you have to go figure out what is the best and most cost efficient way to license software. Because you need to be legal, right? Anybody know what the current fine is? Federal fine for having one piece of unlicensed software in your organization? If they catch you, it's $180,000 per instance of unlicensed software. I'm not talking about, oh, you have 30 copies of Office that are illegal. That's $180,000. No, it's $180,000 times 30. Think that takes down a small business? Someone will remind me if we have time. We'll go look at the BSA. What's that? Yeah, it'll take down a big business. We'll go look at the BSA and I'll tell you what they do. They're not looking to take down businesses, but they do use those businesses in advertisements. And what do you think that does for a business's reputation? A CPA firm. How ethical are they with your books if they can't even license the software they need to run their business? It's just a question. So acquisition process. A lot of this stuff is redundant. We've talked about it. Identify key features. Consider network and web-related issues. Establish volume and future growth. That's the cool thing with web, right? We can grow. We can scale very quickly. If I want to scale an internal application, I might have to go buy another server, hire Chad to create a cluster so that both servers work together, get myself a little network attached storage for 30 grand, right, Chad? Yeah. Specify hardware, software, personal constraints, prepare a request for proposal or quotation. Folks, this is the key here. Salesmen of software are no different than a salesman of a car. What is their primary goal? To sell whatever it is they need to sell. This is how Lumberman's Insurance got sold on a software that I think I told you we ended up putting in the closet and financing for 2 more years, even though we weren't using it. Because someone inside the organization just chose to use the software and didn't do this process. Request for a quote means we go out to the software company, we have detailed requirements, and the software company comes back and says, yes, our software does that. No, our software doesn't. This is how much it may cost to get our software to do it. And here's the change in support if we modify the software. By the way, large companies can make mistakes when it comes to software too. St. Charles a few years ago implemented an EMR, electronic medical records software. It was so piss poor that they ended up dumping it and suing the software company. I would ask you to just consider briefly what the cost of going through that whole process was. How much labor, how much time, and then let's talk about the intangible costs of having to put end users through that process. And how do you think how receptive were they of the next EMR solution? So identify vendors, outsourcing options. I can program it in-house. I can hire somebody to program it. I can buy software. Look at existing users, testing the application, benchmark, match each package against your request for proposal features, and rank the choices. Now, let me tell you how I did this for New Hope just recently. They were looking at purchasing a new video recording system, multi-camera, live production, streaming to the web, plus recording, plus putting out on the website system. Okay. What we did is we did this thing. I know you might have heard of it. It's called an Excel spreadsheet. And we listed the features and functionalities we needed. We then listed each of the companies that offered them, the cost. If they didn't offer a feature, it wasn't on there. It's just a checkbox. Did they do what we needed to do? We then analyzed the checkboxes, compared them to the cost. We did not go with the most expensive software. We also did not go with the cheapest software. We went with the best software that offered the most value. So far, they're happy with it. So you got to do the cost benefit analysis. Folks, you do this at home, hopefully. You have a budget. Hopefully you have some discretionary money. Maybe not now, you're students. But you got to decide what the cost benefit is, right? Identify, calculate the total cost of ownership, each option. When you purchase the software, what are you buying? You're buying a license. Do you own the software? So essentially you're leasing the software, right? Can I make changes to that software? No, I can't go in and reprogram it legally. Purchase package, consider supplemental maintenance agreement. You know, folks, I use my laptop so much that I spend the money to put a 4-year warranty on it. It's always paid for itself. Sometimes in that cycle, I end up having it repaired. Sometimes I don't. Most people just look at, oh, it would have been $29 to repair it. But I had to send it in for 7 days, which means I was 7 days without my laptop. That's not acceptable to me. Prepare a recommendation, do a presentation, whatever. Implement the solution. Is it possible we get the solution in our organization and figure out it's not what we were sold? Yeah. That's the case. Let's get rid of it quick. Let's not try to make it work just because we have it. How many times have any of you been able to fit a square peg in a round hole? No matter how many times you try, right? So before new software becomes operational, you must complete all implementation steps: loading, configuring, testing, converting data, training users, training users, training users. The more you train your users, the better the implementation is going to go. So many people try to shortcut that. And then the problem with that is, then who is responsible for training the user if you don't do it? The user. And are 2 users going to train themselves to do the same process differently? Yes. Requirements, documentation, document. Normally that request for proposal becomes a contract with the company. This is what you said the software will do when we get it. This is how much the cost is. You know, when it comes in and it doesn't do that, software company better make it do that in a hurry, or give us some of our money back, or take your product back And since we spent 2 years on this process and $500,000 and your software didn't do what it said it did, we will see you in court. And if we have this documentation, we have a good chance of winning those cases, right? Yesterday, I overheard a conversation where someone said, hey, when you move out of that apartment, make sure you take pictures, right? So that when they come clean it and don't give you back any of your cleaning fee, you have proof and evidence that it was clean when you left, right? This is no different. We got to cover ourselves. So we summarize the primary viable alternatives. Normally, if you're doing this internally, you don't just go in and say, here's the solution. You go in and say, here's the top 3. Here's the differences. Here's the similarities. Here's the costs. Here's the total cost of ownership for 3 over a 4 or 5 year period. Now management, you choose. Right? Because at the end of the day, it's their choice. You may have a recommendation of what you think is best, but always good to give alternatives. With our project here, you're not going to do that. You're going to just present. We just don't have time. You're just going to present what you feel is best. Why? Explain why the evaluations section team chose the recommended alternative or chose the package they did. Questions, comments. They may want to go back and review the data. This may take multiple meetings. Yes, present to management. We get it. Once we choose, the project's not over yet. We now have another sub-project of the main project, which is figuring out how we're going to do it, how long it's going to take, develop it, get it in-house, do whatever. Perform additional systems analysis work. We could decide, we could do all this work, present it to management, and management suddenly says, whoa, didn't realize it was going to be that expensive. We just don't have the budget right now. We're going to put this off till next fiscal year. So we start transitioning to the design process. We start designing tasks. Have an accurate, understandable system requirements document. Duh. That's why we've done all these DFDs, XYZs, PDQs, use cases, data dictionaries, requirements documents, transition diagrams, because we now know exactly what we need. Now, are we going to do all of that if we're not going to develop the system ourselves or outsource development? Probably not. We're going to focus on requirements and skip a lot of these steps. Go out to a company and say, this is our requirements, right? But in this process, here's one thing that I've always found. In doing this process, there is a great opportunity to improve or lean the business process. To ask that question, well, why do we do it that way? Why does that part go from point A to point C to point B to point C to point A to point C to point D to being done? Huh. And normally the answer you get is, because that's how we've always done it. Well, how about if we think about doing it differently? This is a great time to improve the business because we're looking at the logical and physical properties. So we start looking at logical and physical. We start developing this system, guidelines. Analysts must understand the logical design of the system before beginning the physical design. Not only should the analyst, but we have to make sure everybody's on board. All the requirements we set are in the design. Everything's been thought of, hopefully. By the way, a lot of this stuff, if we do this right, limits scope creep. If we've covered it, there's no reason for somebody to say, boy, it would be nice if it also did this. By the time we're ready to design the system, we should know exactly what the system needs to do, how it needs to do it, and how long it should take to do it. Then if somebody comes up and says, boy, it would be nice if it did this, too late. We can do that in the next version. The goal, to build a system that is effective, reliable, and maintainable. Do you notice that the goal has switched here? Remember how we said at the beginning of the term, a successful project is what? One that's delivered on time, under budget. Remember those? Now suddenly it says is effective, reliable, and maintainable. I say those are more important. If I have a system that's effective, reliable, and maintainable, and it took me 60 more days than I was supposed to have to do this, does that mean it's unsuccessful? That system, when we finally went through a systems design phase at Lumberman's Insurance, as far as I know, I haven't worked for them for, 15 years now. That system is still in place today. It's probably ready for a replacement. Hopefully they've upgraded. I'm sure they have. Here's what's funny about that. I also helped them get their website going. And this, my friends, is pretty much the same website they've had. They've changed some pictures, but the navigation is the same. Doesn't this look 80s retro to you all? Yeah. Do we judge a company by their website? Yeah, we do. Sorry, Lumbermans, but your website sucks. So user considerations. If we've considered the user from the start, we've considered the user, right? We don't just want to shove something down the throat of the people that have to actually use the system just because management says this is what we want. So data should be entered in a new system where and when it occurs, because delays cause data errors. If we're doing data conversion, how much are we getting? Is it profitable to then go in and manually enter data that was not converted? In the case of Lumberman's Insurance, we decided it was profitable to pay some overtime, to have pizza parties and have people work a couple hours each night for a few weeks and on weekends to get data that was not able to be converted into the system. Because then once it was in there, it was in there. People didn't go back to the old system to figure out data. That was tough. That was a tough sale. So data considerations, every instance of entry and change to a data should be logged. That's why we have a database log. We should know who put in the data, who changed the data, and why. This is the only way we do auditing and catch people who are stealing from companies. We use what's called general acceptable accounting practices, and we implement them into software. The person that can print the check is never the person that can sign the check. We want someone else looking at the check. Data should be entered in the system only once. That would be very nice. Data duplication should be avoided. So if we've normalized our database, we're doing well. Use a modular design modules that perform a single function, are easier to understand, implement, and maintain. So what are we talking about here? Objects. Now, in the case of an ERP system, enterprise resource planning system, the idea behind that is we have one system that does everything. We manage our marketing, we manage our accounting, our sales, our financing, our ordering, our inventory, our maintenance, our support, everything. But maybe a company can't afford millions of dollars, so they start with one module of our system. Why do we like that? Why do we sell them a $10,000 sales customer relationship management system?
Bring us back for the rest of the system.
Exactly. Because are they then going to go implement Oracle system? Probably not. So once we get them on the hook, they're there, right? Remember I said this is how I would design systems. What is your top 5 biggest needs? What else would you like the system to do? All right, now we have a design principle. We get in a piece of the system. They come back to us and say, now we'd like it to do this and this and this and this. Okay, that's called reoccurring income, right? Design goals often conflict with each other. We have to decide what's more important. Do we want to spend money on a cool interface or one that works? So most design conflicts come with, will come down to basic conflict of quality versus cost. Yep. Quality versus cost. It is very clear today with enough time, money, we can do anything. I mean, it still amazes me. I remember as a kid sitting there watching Star Trek and Captain Kirk was talking to the computer. And I'm like, wow, that's never going to happen. That's sci-fi. Today I can write an entire Word document, start up Word, create a report, save it, email it, etc., without even touching the computer or keyboard. Avoid decisions that achieve short-term savings but might mean higher costs. This is what most companies do. This sucks. When do I need it? Or yesterday. How long am I willing to wait for it? 0. Why is it most packages are shipped from Amazon today? Because that's when I want it. So I have a short-term higher cost that may cost me a lot more in the future, right? We've talked about prototyping. I'm not going to spend much time on it. The fact is we plan, we analyze, we may start a design. This part of the prototyping continues to go round and round and round until we get it right. Once we have a prototype that we know will work, we implement it. We don't need to program the system. Program software to create a prototype. We can do it through case tools, application generators, report generators. Storyboard it. Click this button, it goes here, it does this, it does that. Is that what you want? Yep, okay. So the idea of a 4th generation language, we get more to plain English programming, where we don't have to write code. Limitations of prototypes, expensive. Less efficient than fully developed systems, yes. Developers can upgrade the prototype into the final information system, yes. But what if we can it? We spend a lot of money on nothing, right? Otherwise, the prototype's discarded. Development trends. Software quality will be more important than ever. Yes. Why? Because there's more competitors, right? Hundreds of thousands of applications for this device. Some that all do the same thing. How do I compete? By the way, they're all 99 cents. So can I compete on price? Nope. So how do I compete? Features, functionality, performance. And I would ascertain, folks, that very soon, when people start realizing how important security is, people will compete on security. End users right now, they get to you go in, I go to US Bank. Do I know if it's secure? Is there a little HTTPS in the corner? Is there something that says this is a secure data transmission between your phone and the server at your bank? No. But as soon as I get hacked, maybe that's a selling feature. It exists today. Why not sell it? Project management will be major focus of IT managers. Yes. As we take more stuff to the web, do we still need to do this process? It's even more important because we don't have control to change it. We don't have control of our data. We just use the software. We're starting to see loose coupling. That's where I get an email system that will play with my SharePoint system, that will play with my accounting system, that plays with my online customer relationship management system. They all start sharing data so that the data is essentially in one place for me, right? Why did Adobe take their photo suite to the web? Why did they build these huge data centers instead of just giving you the disk? You already said it. Starts with reoccurring income, income. People weren't buying every version of Photoshop. So they were using Photoshop for many years. They didn't need to. It did what they needed it to do. Now you get Photoshop as a student. I guess it's $9 a month, $9.99 a month or whatever. As a student, it's $19.99 if you're not a student. By the way, that's $20 times 12. That's $240 a year. When before you'd pay $500 and you'd use it for 5 years. But now if you can't get Photoshop via disk, you're stuck buying it at the price that it's listed. And why will you do that? Because for years, what program did you learn to edit photos in? Ding, 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 ding. You all are so smart. What's that?
It's after 9.
Oh, it's after 9. Bye, everybody from the web. Have a good day.